Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Kitty, Austen, and Jon Tuffnel from Saint Agnes to the podcast. Saint Agnes' new record, Bloodsuckers, will be out this Friday on Spinefarm Records. Bloodsuckers is a really raw and aggressive record, blending punk angst with some early nu metal fury. The track I Mean Nothing to You is equal parts Rage Against the Machine's Killing in the Name of and Limp Bizkit's Break Stuff, a passionate and furious banger. But you can instantly contrast that with This Is Not the End, a beautiful piano ballad full of heartache. What Bloodsuckers is at its core is a journey through grief as Kitty processes her mother's death. It's an incredible record, and I highly recommend giving it a spin when it comes out. I listened to Saint Agnes' discography before this interview, and Bloodsuckers is their heaviest and most aggressive record to date, and I think it could be a huge record if it finds its audience. Jon and Kitty discuss their passion for music and the journey to forming Saint Agnes, wanting to scare the Britpop scene, creating an image around the new album, the process of grief, and more. Jon and Kitty were an absolute delight to talk to, and I hope everyone enjoys this chat.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We're having a crazy heat wave in the UK at the moment. And so we're kind of suffering a little bit from that, as like all goth bands should.
Well, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it.
Thanks for taking time to chat to us.
Yeah. The new album's a lot of fun. It's very different. I went back and listened to your discography on Bandcamp this morning, and the new stuff is very different.
Yeah.
Was that birthed out of COVID and just like lockdowns and wanting to do something different and having time, or was it just like I don't know, a member change or something?
Yeah, so the first album, Welcome to Silvertown, we actually like wrote it really long time ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we recorded it as well quite a long time ago, and then didn't actually get to release it like as quickly as we wanted.
About 18 months after we finished it.
Yeah, so and we're like moving forwards all the time. We're like always writing new songs. Like we're very like productive. So by the time that album came out, we were already, I think, moving in quite a different direction.
Yeah.
But had to like play all of those songs. Not had to. Obviously, we wanted to like play them all on tour.
Yeah.
And like we played these like much heavier versions of them right away, didn't we?
Yeah, we just really enjoyed, because that album was written before we'd really toured as a band.
Yeah.
And like Ben, our bass player at the time, he had never been in a rock band at all. So it was like his input into the album was, or just when you have someone in the band who's just around, even if they're not writing stuff, their taste reflects sometimes in the decisions you make. And it wasn't until we'd gone on tour that we all had a real taste of like, you know what we want to be? We want to just go out and like scare people a little bit more and be kind of the loudest band in the room. And particularly at that time, there was a lot of like psychedelic bands and shoegaze bands and stuff. And it was quite fun getting booked on those bills. And you'd have bands that, you know, if you're playing in the north of England, like every band basically sounded kind of like the Stone Roses or Oasis. And then we would come out and play this kind of garage blues punk and play it as aggressively as like we were Nine Inch Nails. And we really enjoyed it. And so our music has come to start to reflect more that part of what we enjoy about being in this band.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. We'll talk more about the new record, but let's go back in time. Your Bandcamp page says you're in London. Is that where you guys are based?
Yeah, East London. Yeah.
Is London where you guys were born, or?
Yeah, I'm from London. Jon is in.
I'm from just outside, like sort of Essex, and then down in Hampshire, but basically kind of on if we're talking kind of American level geography, or
it's basically London.
It's basically London. For the UK, small differences mean a lot more. You know, if you're kind of like 5 miles outside of the main ring road outside London, people see you as kind of like living in a different country effectively. But on an American level, it's probably still the suburbs. You know.
Yeah. I mean, you get that here in America, where it's like I lived in Philadelphia for a while, and people would be like, "Oh, I live in Philly," but they'd live in like New Jersey, a whole different state, and you'd be like, "Fuck you, you don't live here. You're not one of us." So people are still pretentious about that here.
I mean, the band started in East London, and both of us, our families are kind of from South and East London. There's like a lot of
just as far back as we could go, really. Both of us are just from London.
What got you into music?
My dad's a musician, not a famous one. I'm not a nepo baby in any way, an unsuccessful musician. So I just grew up in a house full of like instruments, and just played them really, like from as young as I started playing. So it's just kind of something I've always done. I
mean, like, my parents are the opposite. Neither of them are musical at all. They like music, but kind of. Yeah. I mean, they like music in the way that normal people like music. They like it at a wedding, and they put it on in the car and stuff. My dad just loves really soft 80s kind of ballads with just as much reverby saxophone as you can possibly get. And I think I rebelled against that immediately. I just really loved the idea of playing guitar. For me, the big moment was watching Back to the Future and seeing Michael J. Fox do the solo in Johnny Be Good. And I was really young, and it was like the first film I'd ever really seen or have any memory of seeing. And it made such a massive impression. And I loved his kind of total punk way of doing that thing, and that whole bit at the end of like, you may not get it yet, but your kids are going to love it. Everything about that really resonated with me, and I've kind of been chasing that feeling ever since. And so just learned how to play guitar, and as soon as I had a guitar, I just wanted to write songs, and it's never stopped.
So you've been playing in bands, I mean, for a while, and trying to chase it, or no?
Forever. Sorry, I was shaking my head in disbelief at like how much we've done.
Yeah, both of us just have been in bands from like early teenage years, just onwards, really. It's all we've ever done. It's all we can do. Kitty got roped into like doing sort of like singing covers gigs that her dad had got and stuff, and just like you're thrown on stage early. And I mean, I think I must have played like thousands of gigs in my lifetime.
It's crazy. And like you did, like Kitty was like straight away kind of doing her own like band with her brother and stuff like that, and you did what you carried on doing, which is just kind of like go for it, don't think too much about it, just like strap a guitar on and like go and play and entertain people. And
I always like to describe myself as a band person rather than a musician. I would say I'm just somebody who just needs to be in a band.
I was saying, I just started bands at school, and it was like, I just remember when school was finishing and people started talking about going to university, I was kind of dumbfounded. I was like, I thought this was our life now. I thought we were doing our band now. And like my friends like, oh no, it was really cool, but I want to go and be a marine biologist.
Sad for you.
And I was like, really? I believed that we all were of the same mind, and kind of like we're a chosen family. I was fucking heartbroken. But it's that. As soon as that happened, I just then started more and more bands, and it's just, I still feel like I'm in the same band effectively, and Kitty probably does as well, that we've just effectively just been in one band with ever evolving members, and we've now just formed up, and we are Saint Agnes.
It's this ever evolving process of just like, you got to get that right mixture, right chemistry. And then like once it clicks and it goes forward, it's like, okay, magic happens.
Yeah. Well, that was it. Once we found each other and we really, because as I said, in London, the scene at the time was a very specific thing that every venue was just the same kind of stuff. And Kitty and I really bonded over the idea that we wanted to be a band that was kind of more in your face.
It's a bit obnoxious, really.
And have some like, kind of some flair in
swagger.
Yeah.
Some like rock swagger, really. Because at the time, that was the like most uncool thing you could do. And that's the theme of this band, really, is that we always like sabotage ourselves. We're always like trying to subvert everything that we do. We just we both get a real kick out of like constantly trying to self-sabotage.
Absolutely. I just remember like every band that we were playing with, like the guitars were just effects. That was it. It was just like chord and reverb. And I was like, fuck, I just want to go and do like a Jack White style solo. You know, I can't play blues very well, but I'm just going to try and see what comes out. You know, I grew up playing Metallica and stuff like that. And I was like, well, and I could never play it very well either. So, but hearing someone like Jack White was quite inspiring. That I was like, well, if you just fucking like force it through and just do it, and then it all happens in the blink of an eye. And we kind of just did that. And Kitty was the same, that we gave each other permission to just push ourselves. And we really found through doing that a love of spontaneous, fiery moments. And I think on the new record, the thing that we've really embodied with that is Kitty's vocals, which are very spontaneous and fiery and kind of have that, the same way that a Jack White guitar solo is, Kitty's
like
vocal is kind of
punk spirit, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's that very early punk hardcore DIY aesthetic of just like you don't have to be the best musician. It doesn't have to be played perfectly, but it's just like passion and rage and just like we gotta say something and we gotta be loud and like we don't care what anybody else says or is doing.
Yeah. Just got it's so important when you watch a band and you're watching a band and the person on stage really means it. That, like, for me, that's the thing that gives me goosebumps every time. You know, it doesn't really matter what music I'm watching. It can be something that's normally really outside my wheelhouse. But if someone's up there and they really mean what they're doing,
it's the authenticity just like comes across, then we find that really inspiring.
That's always going to inspire us more than something that is, you know, rich and beautiful and polished, but the person doing it isn't that into it.
Right. The most talented musicians in the world, but they're just standing there looking bored, and you're just like, oh man, this is a bummer.
Yeah.
I mean, the you know, the magic happens when you have someone
someone can do both.
Can do both. Yes.
Yeah. Where'd the band name come from?
So we like surfing, which in the UK isn't like,
it's quite an odd thing, really.
That common,
Obviously, it's fucking freezing. But there's a little surfing village in Cornwall called Saint Agnes, and basically the beach there is known as really kind of like really unfriendly to outsiders who aren't like from Saint Agnes in the area, and it's known like locally as the Badlands. And we just thought that was the fucking coolest thing ever. So that's why.
Nice. Talk to me about getting connected with Spinefarm Records.
Yeah. Wow. So Dante, who's like, what is Dante's job?
What is Dante?
Who is Dante?
Does he work for them? I don't know. He's the head of A&R for Spinefarm, which like
important.
It's very important. And but Dante, he's I don't know if you've ever met him, Dante Benito. He's one of those people that if you look at kind of anything interesting that's happened in
heavy music,
you pretty much will find his name somewhere in there.
In the record sleeve.
Yeah, you know, he's thanked on Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning, and he was the editor of Kerrang magazine in the 80s and everything. And I met him at some like music thing in London, you know, just like
years and years ago, a long time ago.
And the event that it was at was not particularly heavy music focused, but I ended up talking to him and I didn't really know who he was, and we just talked and we both love Metallica, and we were talking about Metallica, and he was then like, oh, I worked with Metallica in the early days, and I still stay in touch with Lars, you know, and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, this guy's obviously like someone pretty important, but we stayed in touch. And
yeah, he started coming to shows like pretty much from the word go. So this is a long time ago, and he kept coming to shows, and you know, like we'd hang out all the time. Like we'd hang out with him and go for drinks, go for something to eat, and he just became like, I mean, like we just fucking love him, don't we? It's like, you don't meet a lot of people in the industry that you would end up calling a true friend, I would say. And Dante is like exactly that to us. And so like working with Spinefarm, it's just happened kind of totally organically. It was the right time. We'd kind of always, us and Dante wanted to work together, but for whatever reason it hadn't come about, and finally it did, and it's just been amazing. I can't think of anyone else that I would trust this record to more than Dante. Like I know if Dante's involved, it's in safe hands, and this record's like really important to me. So yeah, it's great. To really
know someone and develop trust takes time.
And this band, you know, like it's our whole fucking life. And we wouldn't, you know, sign to a label as big as Spinefarm, to be honest, at all, really.
No,
because have been very DIY and totally independent up to this point. And it's only because it is Dante that we were like, fuck it.
And we've known him for long enough that the conversations are very like honest and frank. And he was like, I trust you guys to do your thing. You know, you know how to do it better than anyone else knows how to do it. And he's known us for long enough to know that we can kind of deliver the goods with it. You know,
and I guess like trust works both ways, doesn't it? Right?
Trust works both ways. He, you know, a band of our size probably wouldn't have got the same situation if they were kind of fresh on the radar. You know, it takes time, and the conversations that we've had with him, just know that we're so on the same page about what it is that we love in music. He sees the bands that he works with, he enjoys them for the same reason that we enjoy bands, and that matters a lot. When any other time that we've had any music industry dealings, it seems really exciting, and then you sit down for like a meeting and someone says something where you just immediately go, you don't understand this band at all. They'll say something like, oh, we've got this great like fashion designer that could work with Kitty, like who's like does like bondage wear or something, and it's like, no. This is, you know, we're not here to like sell a band on like on sex appeal. Like the whole point is we're a band, we're a real band. We're not like Kitty and the Saint Agneses. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, you are.
We are, financially.
Talk to me about COVID and how that affected the band.
Oh God, it was awful. We in like 2019 we'd played like 80 shows that year, which was, you know, like for us that was the most we'd done, and we were absolutely like raring to go. We were super tight because we'd done so many shows. We'd just got off a tour with Monster Magnet, and we just supported Horror.
And we'd gone from at the beginning of the year selling out a London show to like 100 people, to the end of the year selling out a London show to 500 people, and we were like, stuff was moving, you know?
And we had like a whole year's worth of shows booked in, and we were just like, right, this is it, like we're going, this is like our time. And then overnight, obviously, that whole year just cancelled, the whole thing just called off. And it was devastating, really. Like, you know, and we're two people that all of our adult lives, like, this is all we've done is like driving bands. Driving band, not physically driving bands around. Driving our own
band project.
A band project. So for us, it was just so difficult. And we were lived in London, and were in a tiny flat, and it was very difficult, wasn't it?
It was just, it was. I mean, it was hard on everyone, and we're not unique in any particular way. But for us, our whole identity is wrapped up in functioning as a band person. Like when, you know, we had day jobs and stuff, and you were doing the day job, that wasn't, when someone said, what do? You weren't like, oh, I do this shit job. You're like, I'm in a band. And you're like, oh yeah, I do this other thing on the side, but to fund my life being in a band. And when COVID hit, not having shows, not knowing what was going to come up at all, how anything was going to go, and just at the moment that things, after years of slogging away, that things are going well, we had no identity. If you're a parent and it's COVID hits, you're still a dad.
Right, yeah.
Like your identity's still there, or whatever it might be. And a lot of people that we are friends with have like real careers, and they were like, yeah, I just get to be at home for a bit, but I'm still a accountant or whatever, and their identity was intact. But we were just kind of like, well, what are we? And if this doesn't come back, what now do we do? And so that's why we gave ourselves a project, which was we didn't have all of our equipment or anything, and we were just like stuck in this really small flat, and we were like, let's just record a cover and film a video on a phone and edit it in a day. Let's do it and see what comes out. And the first thing we did was Lana Del Rey. What's that song?
Can't remember.
I can see the sweet boy swinging.
I can't remember what it's called.
Oh yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember what the song's called. Anyway, we did that, and we did it. We recorded it in a day, filmed a little video all in one day, and we're like that kept us sane.
And put it out as well. And we did that. We did a whole kind of series of them. I think lots of people are doing things like that.
Yeah.
And we did like Wish, 9 Inch Nails. We did Nancy Sinatra song, just all different genres, taking it and kind of Saint Agnes applying them. And actually it was really cool because like we weren't tied to any kind of release plan or schedule, or because often as a musician you make music and then people don't actually get to hear it for months and months, maybe even like years down the line, and that's quite like unsatisfying. So I think like I really enjoyed just immediacy of that project. Project of like just make the song, make the video, put it out next week, do another one. So that was quite freeing.
It was really freeing, and I think up until that point we'd been quite hardline about the way that we recorded stuff. Was like as a live band in the room together recording to tape. That's what we did for the first album. And then for the next EP that we had just finished, we weren't able to do that fully, but we did as close to it as we could again with that one. Like there was The Family Strange, which was a big step forward in our sound, that one. Like I love that EP. I really like feel like we still play those songs live and it sits really well with what we do. But we were like trying to think about what we wanted to do, and having to do everything at home just on a really shitty laptop with crap mics, and like just all of it being really budget. Made us kind of think, what, there's something really nice about this kind of casualness of this, and maybe we don't have to do everything live as a band. I was like, well, I can get kind of crazy guitar stuff doing it this way, sat here like tinkering for hours on my own and just plugging in my effects pedals and doing weird stuff than I can in the studio when the red light's on and you've just got to do it, and all of that stuff just made us think, well, when we come out the other side of COVID and we get to record again, we will try and embrace both of those worlds. And that's something that we've done. Definitely. We've learned how to use the studio more as an instrument, I suppose, and be more creative through having to do that, to make the most out of next to nothing during COVID.
Yeah,
it was a real interesting time, and a lot of bands were able to like tap into a level of creativity and change the way they release music and like find ways to survive when it was just like, we don't know if we're ever going to play shows again or go see live music again. And it's just like music might be fucking dead, right? Like,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And it felt really kind of stupid in a way, up against, seeing these figures for the number of people that were actually dying and like the number, all of the real stuff. But it also made, during COVID, like everyone was turning to art, for comfort. Everyone was listening to records had not had time to listen to before, and everyone was watching films they had been putting off watching for years because they'd never had time. And it made you realize that, yes, art in a way is kind of frivolous and a thing that you do once you've fed yourself and everything, but it's actually really important.
Well, it's kind of the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Like, otherwise what,
what else is there? Yeah. If you're just surviving to eat, then yeah.
And I think it opened up a lot of people to music they wouldn't usually listen to, because they're like, well, I'm not going anywhere, why not listen to this metal record that I would never choose to listen to? Oh, now I'm a fan. So,
Definitely.
Let's talk about Bloodsuckers. Where'd the title come from? It's the opening track on the record. Where'd that come from, and how does that fit into the theme of the album?
Yeah, so Bloodsuckers is basically like all those people in your life who you want to say like fuck you to, really. I think everyone has various, like bloodsuckers in their life that, people trying to crush you, or, it can be like anybody. And this is like a very angry song. And that's kind of a theme throughout a lot of our music, is like, fuck you, like we're a gang, fuck you.
Yeah, it's always been kind of like in what we've done, and this is like the latest iteration of that kind of view, and the lyrics kind of came from a really personal place for Kitty, and so just kind of wanted to capture that. And I think like another aspect of it, the gang side of the band and the way we present ourselves, like we're also aware that like a sports team is kind of a gang, and we really like the whole idea of like sports chants and things, and a lot of our vocals and stuff are quite slogany, and we think of them almost as like the kind of crowd chanting thing. And so when we were talking about the record and we were figuring out what it was going to be, one of the ideas, like this kind of idea of like Team Bloodsuckers, kind of came up as just like, it's a cool name, Team Bloodsuckers. And Kitty and I, we were so enthused by the idea that we made like merch for ourselves. Yeah. Before we'd written the song, actually, or even like come up with the idea of an album. John got like an American football shirt. Yeah. With Bloodsuckers on it, and I got like basketball shorts with Bloodsuckers on it. Which we just wore on, which we wore on the tour before we'd even recorded the record.
We had a lot of confidence in that Bloodsuckers was going to be something cool.
Yeah. So we're kind of simultaneously saying that like the Bloodsuckers are the bad guys, and also recognizing that we ourselves like are fallible human beings, and
and like it being empowering, like taking on the title.
Exactly. Reveling in the idea of being the bad guy at the same time as kind of saying fuck you to the bad guy. It's that kind of duality.
Yeah. I'm curious in the musical evolution, because I said I listened through the discography, and you definitely get heavier with each progression, but this album is like a real leap forward. And I know the first time I heard it, maybe it was one of the singles, but I was like, and I mean this not in a bad way at all, like it's very nu metal, and like even to the point like listening to I Mean Nothing to You, I'm like, that's just a modern like break stuff. Like kids are gonna get in a pit and fucking go nuts to that song. Like, and it's catchy. Like, where did that come from this time around?
I think it comes all the way back from the first album, Welcome Silvertown. The first song, Welcome Silvertown, that riff, like the first main riff in that song and the chorus, the way we played that live, because I was kind of like the new metal fan of the band, I suppose. And I don't think the rest of the guys were particularly into that music. I just hadn't really come across it loads in it outside of its most crap sort of forms,
Sure.
And I remember kind of saying like, this feels sort of new metal. When we performed it live, Kitty naturally was becoming kind of this front person that would have been a perfect new metal front person back in the day. It was like, when I count to 4, everyone's going to get the fuck up, It was all happening. Like, it was just there. So I think that somehow we kind of managed to sort of use the new metal fun, simple kind of like bounce feeling. That I think like it just makes you move like bands. But I think it's like, if you look at where new metal's from, like bands like Rage Against the Machine, and And like, I really love White Zombie, who their last album, I think it was the first new metal album in a lot of ways, even though it never gets credited as that. And I think that having those influences, and like Sepultura Roots was like a big influence for us, listening to those riffs. And they're all stuff that you can really move to.
Yeah, like live, new metal is great for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
The bad stuff about new metal, like any genre, always comes once it becomes like a photocopy that's been photocopied too many times.
Yeah.
But the first original thing is great, and it still stands. You listen to like classic Korn and you see why that was important, like it makes sense as to why Korn was great, because they were doing something that reached people, and on an emotional level. I think that's really, this album's an emotional album, and new metal in its first version was about trying to communicate in the same way that grunge did. It was about trying to be honest and give a home to kind of outsiders.
Yeah. Kitty, talk to me about the lyrics on this, because like this feels like a progression lyrically as well, where like you could listen to this record and just be like, oh, it's just an angry fuck you record, but like reread the press release and it's like these songs have a deep meaning under that, like that anger and passion is really coming out. Like, talk about the lyrical process. And
so my mum died in 2021 very unexpectedly and very quickly. Everything happened very quickly. It was like very sudden, and she was very young. And that was like really just devastating, like absolutely awful, very traumatic thing that happened to me. And I think because all my life I've turned what's going on in my life into, music, into art. That is what I always done. I think that's what all, artists do. I just needed to make something. I needed to make a record, and all of that emotion, like the like devastating kind of lows, and a lot of rage when somebody dies. There's like rage, there's a lot of like euphoric joy as well, because I think your chemicals must just be doing like crazy things in your brain, so you're going through this like roller coaster of emotions, and all of that is like in the record. I think you can definitely hear that in like the delivery of the songs. And it was either like just lay on the floor for like 6 months, or make something, and I basically did both of those things. It was really tough recording process, because it was really important to me to be able to get that emotion across as best as possible, but at the same time I was just like really quite broken. So it was quite tough, wasn't it, recording?
Well, it's kind of, there's moments where I was like, are we doing the right thing? Because watching someone experience those emotions, not when you're recording, just in life, is really hard, and you want to help that person to not feel that bad. But Kitty was committed to using the music as a way to like go, well, I want to kind of document what it is now.
I think that's just what people do, isn't it? It's like you make the art because you want to explore it and figure it out. And by putting it into like art or music, you can start to better understand it and understand yourself and how you feel about it.
You can take it outside yourself and kind of look at it a bit
exactly,
more.
Yeah.
And there were moments when Kitty was recording a vocal, and I could tell that she was like really feeling terrible. And it was really raw, and it's hard to think sometimes, are we doing the right thing? Am I playing a part in putting her through something awful? But he was determined, no, this is what we want to do, and I want it to be unfiltered. And I think lyrically, the thing that I really sort of like about the lyrics is how unfiltered they are. I think that you can never kind of like express anger better than when you're angry. If you sit down and write a piece about how you felt angry yesterday, it might make a lot of sense, and it might be quite interesting to read, but it won't have the pen jabbing through the paper, the immediacy. And it's when you're doing it in the moment, it's maybe not necessarily quite so eloquent, but there's a rawness that you can't get. And Kitty was writing lyrics really like in the deepest moments, generally quite quickly. You would kind of wait and be like, no, I don't feel like I've written anything right for this yet. And then you'd be like, right. And it would just all be there. And she'd be like, I want to record right now. Let's go and record vocals right now.
I'm sorry.
And then I'd be sat there with headphones on and just suddenly hear this like massive bang and the microphone would be thrown across the room and stuff, like, and Kitty would be on the floor crying. And I think, fuck, like hearing the take and be like, that is an amazing take, at the same time as wanting to comfort my friend, you know, it's a hard thing to do, but I feel like it's so important for us, you know. For some people, putting yourself through that would have been a bad idea. For us, I can attest to, like, it's been a great process, healing process for Kitty, and it's been great for me and Andy, who's the drummer in the band, who's kind of been with us through thick and thin, as well, to just really get close. You know, we're tighter than ever.
Yeah. My dad died in 2019, and you talk about that emotional roller coaster. Everybody will be crying, and then like somebody would tell a funny story, and then everybody's laughing, and then you're all crying again. And
it's surreal.
And said depression. It sucks when you lose a parent. So
it's unless you've gone through something like that, because I haven't had that like exact kind of like situation. You don't really know quite how it feels, and you don't always know what's the best thing to do for it. But the one thing is that you kind of learn, wow, this is a really, really primal experience. Like grief is comes from a really deep place. It's not something that can just be, you can't just read a book about tips on how to deal with grief. Like it comes from something very physical.
Like, as I'm sure you know, it does just take you. You can't really do anything about that. You just have to ride it as it comes. And
you're going to be forced to ride it whether you deal with it or not. So you kind of have to deal. Those who choose not to deal with it, that pain goes somewhere
I always,
come up
like,
later.
I see grief as like, way I best visualize it is like it's a mountain, you know, of shit, basically, of like, you know, of sadness and anger, and it's this awful mountain, and you just have to go through it. You have no choice. And if you choose not to engage and not to open yourself up to grief, it's not going anywhere, and you haven't started that process of going through the mountain. You know, and still going through it. You know, is there an end? Who knows? Like, but you know, I think you've got to like make the decision to at least to open yourself up. I think because the decision, you know, my mum died, there was nothing I could do about it. I felt very powerless at that point. Like the only decision I could make was to engage with grief. Like that was the only kind of true act. What am I trying to say? Like,
it was the only step forward you could take, wasn't it? It's like
it's the only thing I had choice over. It's like the grief is here. I can choose to deal with it badly or just to absolutely like plunge headfirst into it. So I got to make a choice at a time when I felt quite powerless. And I think making the record was part of that. You know, that was something I could control when everything just felt out of control.
But I remember like halfway through the record sending a few demos around to our manager and stuff, and kind of getting some notes back about like, oh, well, maybe this one would be a good single, but you'd have to like maybe change the language on it or something, and saying to Kitty about it. And one thing that came up was Kitty was like, we don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow. I don't know, you know, we don't know what's going to happen. So fuck changing anything. Like we want to let's make the record we want to make, because if we don't, we'll always regret it. And who knows what's going to happen. Let's just do the thing we want to do, and we'll deal with it. If it doesn't get played on the radio for seven...
Well, to be honest, I just didn't, you know, give a shit, really, like, at all.
Well, it's also, to me, hearing that, it's like a weird thing where I'm like, does radio fucking matter? Like, is that, like, I mean, I guess if you're on the label side, there's somewhere to sell it to. I mean, maybe, like, satellite radio or something, but I'm just like, fuck it, you're gonna put on Spotify, like you want on the playlist, they don't care what the fuck you say, right? Like,
Yeah, it's.
You could talk to our manager about that.
Yeah.
You'd have a few things to say.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
here and not there. So.
It's not our problem, is it? I don't manage a band, so I don't.
Yeah, I just got to talk to you.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like, I think that's the other thing that happens when something like really traumatic happens to you is you can very clearly like see what is bullshit and what is actually important. You can sweep the bullshit away. And I'm always trying to find positives in what happened, because that's another thing that you have control over. It's like, can you actually make something good and valuable come out of this awful thing that's happened? So that was another thing of like having a new attitude to all of this, which is like, do I love this? If not, it's not good enough. If I love it, it's fine. That's what we're doing. And that whole record is that. It is just, the only goal really was like to have a record in my hands that I love every part of and that I've not compromised at all. Yeah. And that's what Bloodsuckers is. Outsider, been waiting so long for you, outsider. Oh, to welcome you home. Outsider, never feel afraid to be the outsider. I promise you're never alone. Yeah, you're never alone. The album is out the end of July. What's the rest of this year look like for the band?
Well, we leave for tour on Sunday. We're supporting Monster Magnet around Europe, which should be really good. We played with them before, and it doesn't necessarily look like the most obvious fit, but actually it works amazingly well. That's why we're doing it again, because it was so much fun last time. The audiences, their audience, they're basically just like pretty open-minded rock fans, and we got a great response. And couldn't have gone better. So we're off with them again. Then we've got another single coming out. The song "This Is Not the End," which is kind of the ballad in the middle of the album. Then the record comes out, and then we'll be on tour in the UK at the same time as working on the next record, probably like somewhere behind the scenes there.
Nice. Is the plan at any point to try to get over stateside, or just like try to make your way through Europe and and figure out what the scene is like there?
We would love to. We'd love to play in America. It's not lack of desire. Just doing it. So I mean, we were, as Kitty said, before COVID, we were touring around the UK and Europe. It was just relentless. We were kind of crossing from the UK into Europe. It felt like every week we were just going backwards and forwards, and it was great, and we're just playing loads. And then everything stopped, and it's taken a while for
get like the machine back up and running. For everybody, it's been like really difficult. So we're just kind of getting back to that now, aren't we? Really? UK and Europe.
Yeah. What we really need is we need an American band to want to take us out on the road in America. That was what would open the doors for us. So if anyone's listening and likes the record, then we would play. Yeah, for sure.
They're very cheap.
Yeah.
The strong and the strange, the losers, the weirdos, the freak superheroes, everything you wanted to change. They're the best things about you. What they tell you. Don't tell me your name. Just tell me why you want me to call you. 'Cause you and me, we're the same. You and me, we're the outsider. I've been waiting so long for you, outsider. We're here to welcome you home.
I think that one of the most important things for us or that we hope for with this record, is that this record finds the people who will get the most from hearing it. I know that all bands kind of it's like almost like a joke of kind of like, share, subscribe kind of thing. We're kind of more of the view that our band is kind of a home for people who feel a little bit outside outside of like the cool thing. You know, we're always trying to self-sabotage, as we said, like, and we always feel like permanent outsiders, and our fans that really respond to the band also seem to kind of be cut from that same cloth. And hopefully when people hear this record, if you're someone that hears it and really feels like, fuck, I really associate with what's happening on this record, like this has helped me in some way, I think it's really important to share that experience with people close to you who might also benefit from that, because nothing kind of bonds like sharing some kind of vulnerability and emotion. And sometimes you don't always have to say something. You can just say, this song means loads to me. I think because of the situation I'm in, I think you might get a lot from it too. That immediately is like a bonding process. And I think if we can kind of like, if this record can help people kind of feel that there's like a home out there for them, and that they can also share something with those around them who are in a similar situation, and that's the ultimate dream, really.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune.